thank you everybody for joining the call today. So this is an interesting topic. I mean, we talked last time about um, synergy or conflict and what's the difference between the two and how do you sort of pivot more to the synergy space. And so when this topic was suggested about teamwork or synergy, my first reaction was, oh, it's sort of much the same thing, and of course it's probably in the similar family, but it's actually quite different when you step back and think about teamwork as opposed to synergy. There's actually a bit to unpack here that I think could be really interesting. I always trust that calls and our webinars work out the way they're meant to work out. And I think it actually could be quite helpful who's on this call today, because there's some brainstorming that I think would be fun to do and be really good to get your input and help build this particular slide on how we create and leverage synergy given the different IDs. So what we're going to dig into today essentially is, first of all, how do you make sure that you're set up for synergy? Like, what are the conditions required in a team context so that you actually can have synergy? What's the role of the leader in making that happen? And then the ID piece, like what's the unique contribution of ID into that synergy space? So that's what the webinar is all about today. Unfortunately, I have to jump. I've never had to do this in 4 years of webinars, but I have to leave at halfway through. But Ian is set up to take it on, and just to give you great kudos here, Ian. When I say Ian set up, that means that Ian and I spoke for about 20 seconds, saying, Ian, things haven't changed for me today the way I was expecting. Are you good to run with? And I showed him what we're doing. He's like, I'm all good. So thank you so much for taking the reins, Ian. I'll stay till about 8:29, and I've got to run into the next room and lead a whole group of people. So all right. So the key difference between teamwork and synergy, I mean, you can have teamwork just with a whole group of people working together on some common goals, but I think the simplest way to explain synergy is about this 1 + 1 = 3. I think everyone gets it. We don't need to dig into any great academic definitions of it. The part I wanted to call out was there is a significant difference between people working in functional teams versus cross-functional teams. And the feedback that we're getting is that the cross-functional team work is like 10 times the value of functional teamwork. So that's why I put in the point about it's not 1 + 1 = 3, it's 1 + 1 = 30, being 10 times the functional teams. So, and I say that to you in the same way that people say to us, boy, learning about my ID was powerful, but learning about other people's IDs, that was like 10 times the value. We get that same anecdotal metric when people talk about how they use the ID in cross-functional initiative teams, that it's 10 times as impactful. So when we think about synergy, I think there's, people can think about their normal team, but constructing teams that work across a business or across an initiative and thinking about the synergy you can create then, I'd love us to be able to get more, active research in that space and learn more. So as we move forward and capture some of this, I think that'll be a fun thing to do. All right, so let's have a look at, what are the conditions for us to actually have synergy as opposed just to teamwork. So sorry, my cursor's moving. I'm trying to move a picture here. What's going on? Here we go. So the very first thing always is about being in stride, because if people aren't in stride and true to themselves, and they tend to feel more insecure. In fact, it happened to me on a call earlier today, and I said, oh, your camera's not on. And they said, oh, you wouldn't want to see me. My eyes are bloodshot. I've been on screen all day. I'm not looking my best. I don't want to be seen. And that's what happens when people are out of stride. We don't want to share our truth. We don't want it to be as visible and as impactful as what we would be if we were more in stride. So if we want people to show up in the context of synergy, synergy means that you've got to be open to the fact that other people might contribute something different or even better than you. So you've got to be able to leave your ego at the door and focus more about what you're doing, not about what other people are thinking about you. That means there's got to be a humility, a vulnerability, in order for genuine synergy to take place. So, we just can't ever escape not just the value, but the importance of first step always check yourself. Am I in stride? Am I like an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 in terms of our big performance indicator? Being in stride so that you're in a place to contribute in the synergy equation. Of course, if you don't have differences, you can have synergy by having intellectual differences. Some people might have expertise that others don't have. It could be an age thing, it could be a gender thing. But what we're here today to talk about is the difference of mindset when we've got different approaches that we bring to the table from an instinctive drives point of view. What is that synergy and how do we harness that synergy? So once you've got people in stride and you've got the diversity of IDs, then what you've got to have is an environment where people feel safe enough to contribute that diversity. Having it is not enough. I personally have seen teams where there's lots of diversity on the team, but if the leader is a controlling, sort of suffocating leader, the diversity can't flourish and actually shine through. So there's work to be done. You don't just announce that there's awareness, safety, trust, respect. You actually have to do some work to build that dynamic as a foundation. And once you've done that, obviously ID helps you do that very, very quickly. Then the next thing you want to have is a sense of equality. Now you can have synergy without real equality. I mean, clearly there can be people that have a lot more expertise than somebody else, but when it comes to ID differences, that's what I mean by equality. You can't. It won't work if someone thinks that their way, from point of view of their ID, trumps someone else's way. That just shuts people down. So that sense of equality of the way people operate is really important. And I think another important ingredient for synergy is to make sure that you've got people lined up around a common purpose or a common goal. Otherwise you can have people in stride, diversity, all the awareness and safety and equality. But if we're all wanting to row the boat in different directions, then we're not going to really get the synergy that's potentially there amongst that particular team. I might just stop there in case there's any questions or additions that people might have as suggestions. Okay, then I'm just going to shift now to talk about the role of the leader in creating these dynamics, and then we'll move into the ID piece. So in terms of the role of the leader, like what do they do to help create these conditions? The first thing, yet again, be in stride. Like one of the biggest things for a leader is to role model what it is that you want to see coming from the team. So checking yourself first and being in stride. The second thing is, how do you hire and then nurture diversity? Now, that doesn't always mean that you need to, I should have put recruit, because sometimes you don't need to go out and hire. There could be people from elsewhere in your team. So, for example, if you're a leader of leaders, maybe there's some people 2 or 3 layers down or out from you that have the differences in ID that you could recruit into a particular initiative. So just looking at a team and thinking, okay, have we got diversity here? And if we don't, where do I get some of the gaps filled from, elsewhere in the business? Or maybe it is a case of recruiting from outside. Role modeling how you value those differences. And I call that out because it normally takes a while for people to come to grips with the fact that different IDs are as equal and as valuable as their own. And so when someone might be rejecting someone else's idea, for example, or perspective, the leader can sort of say, hang on a sec, let's really listen to what that person's saying, because I think there's a gold nugget there, even though someone else might have a negative reaction. So I think role modeling, being in awe of the differences, but especially when it's not as obvious to others straight away, that's a key thing to do from a leadership point of view. Sorry, my cursor keeps moving. So then creating that environment, like just making sure the team does the initial work. A lot of teams, when they come together, want to jump into the work and jump into the strategy and why are we here and what's my role in being here. So like, hang on a sec, before we can do that, we first need to create the foundation of trust and safety and respect and equality that allows the synergy to shine through, making sure everyone's genuinely aligned. That is the role of the leader, but not just getting them aligned, it's keeping them aligned. And when you've got diversity in a team, people are going to go out of alignment like by the hour. And so part of the role of alignment is keeping the torch on the reason we exist. Like, what is the vision, the mission, the purpose, the overarching strategic reason we're here? Because once you get into the discussion of how we're going to tackle that, it becomes a very task oriented conversation. And people then, it's just nature. No, nothing's wrong. This is just what happens. But people then start to talk about their patch, their role, their perspective on it, and not always keeping in mind the higher purpose of why we're there. And so part of the role of the leader, the way you keep that magic alive of the synergy, is keep connecting people back to the purpose and the mission all the time. It may not be hourly, but it's very, very frequently. So it's almost like the default mindset of a team is to want to shift to the task all the time. And so reminding them and realigning them around the vision and the purpose is the continuous, almost like monotonous role for a leader, is to keep the vision flame alive. And it's so important in a team where you're trying to get synergy, because synergy means you've got differences, and differences potentially distract each other around their differences instead of staying focused on the mission and the vision. All right. Anything to add here? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to add. This is really great, and all these are really great points. A couple of things is synergy is not just an inward facing thing with a team. You want to make sure that a team really projects that synergy to the rest of an organization. And that has to do with brand and what kind of a brand do they want to represent as a team. So I think brand is a really important thing here, how they show up, because that can affect not only their own opportunities, but it can affect the leader of the leader. The other thing is when you talk about trust, it's important to understand what that looks like to people and the definition of what trust is and how do you respect people and what our code of conduct is in the form of trust.
Yeah, it's a great point, Pam, because I certainly, or in this context, we don't mean trusting someone's values or even their intentions. I mean, I've just spent, most of this weekend with a group of 65 people, and for all of their frustration, they all said at the end of the second day, well, it's become really clear that we all come to work with the best of intentions, but it's not how we see each other. But now that we've spent time with each other, we can see that that's there. The trust we're talking about is the trust where you feel safe to be able to speak your truth. That's the trust and safety that we're talking about here. I rarely find, just for the sake of this point on this webinar, I rarely find that people aren't trustworthy around their values and their intentions. Some people get derailed. Of course, there are people that don't have the same care factor as what others might bring to the table. They might have their own stuff going on, and especially if they're out of stride in life, that might make it really hard. But creating the trust where people feel they can show up and speak up is what the leader wants to make sure they can nurture. And that includes if there's someone that is toxic in the team, like, you got to have the courage to address that as a leader, because you can truly have one person that derails not just the synergy, but the overall fabric of the team, of their desire to keep being a team and working together. All right, so we might pivot into the ID piece. And this is where I want to open it up to discussion. So what I'm really looking at here is, if you bring different IDs together, what is the synergy that we could be looking for given those IDs. And I've just put some thought starters in here. I don't mean it for this to be exhaustive, but a lot of people think of the verified drive as of the problem solving drive, the way people solve problems. And of course, it's not the only drive that solves problems. But just to kickstart the thinking, when it comes to things like problem solving or decision making, if you thought about bringing in someone who's a verifier and then an avoid verifier, you know, the verifier, you can have both people with expertise, but the verifier is going to want to use their expertise, demonstrate their expertise, use it to solve the problem. No matter how much expertise the avoid verifier has, their first instinct is, how do I collaborate with other people? Like, who do I know that I can bring in and talk this through with? And so they bring a much more collaborative problem solving and decision making style to the table. So to me, it makes sense that you would, if you were looking at what is the synergy between those two drives, well, we by having the verifiers, we get expertise. By having the avoid verifiers, we make sure we stay really collaborative. Similarly, the point about a directive style versus an inclusive style of working. And then it brings a balance, but it also shows where there is potentially a gap. I was thinking of it in the context of, as a leader of the team or even as a member of the team, where would we look for the synergy? And so I'm just going to stop there and let you guys, especially those of you who are quite seasoned with ID, when you think about the verified drive and bringing the opposites to the table, what are the sort of synergistic contributions that you see from both ends of the verify spectrum? And
I
then we'll
always
we'll
look at,
unpack this for the other
yeah.
drives too. Sorry, Ian.
No, you're right. What I was going to say was, I think one of the things, and this is where what I look for as an 8 in verify, I'll go straight to the detail, like more detail, more, and I think, when I look at what the avoid verify is like, let's step back, let's not die. So they'll pull you out of going down a rabbit hole, and they're
Yeah,
going, oh, but overall, or more, and they'll take a more, I don't know, holistic's the right word, but they will step back and just go, but generally we're in the directionally we're right. And you can go, oh yeah, that's right. So I think they're very good at the avoid verify, like from a collaborative, well, it's collaborative, but how to help pull the use verifiers out of a hole, going down a hole.
that's a really good point. Do you mind capturing some notes on this, Ian? And
Yep,
given that I'll
yep,
have to jump in a minute, just so we can add these to the slide.
yep.
So what I heard from that is the verifiers will get into the detail, and it's not just that the avoid verifiers pull you out of the hole; they sort of keep it moving along, don't they? They're
Yeah.
like, enough of that conversation. Let's move it along. And um, yeah, I don't know what the right word is for that, but that's definitely one of the benefits of having both ends of the spectrum on the team.
Mm.
So in my mind, what an avoid verify, and there's a few avoid verifies on this call, they could confirm this. It's the stopping the spin because of the repetitive nature that use verifies can get into when they're discussing things. They kind of discuss it over and over again. And I think that the synergy that the avoid verify brings in is, okay, we've talked about this 3 times. Here's what I'm hearing.
Well, and that's I'm thinking of, if someone was listening to this call and saying, I want to build a team with synergy, do I need all 8 directions? Are some more important than others? Like, what I'm loving about some of these suggestions is, you go, well, if you only had the verifiers, you're likely to be in a tailspin. Whereas if you counterbalance that with some avoid verifiers, they'll save you going down those rat holes, for that sort of thing. And vice versa. You maybe wouldn't get into it deep enough if you didn't have some of the verifiers in the room. So then I can see someone, you go, oh, this is really cool. I mean, this is, when you think about concepts like design thinking, I mean, this is the whole point. You bring people with different coloured hats to the table, so you've got that variety of perspective, all putting their brain power to the common cause. So this is fabulous. Thanks, Pam.
Well, and two, as I'm listening to you talk about that, Paul, the one thing that we would say if we were describing an avoid verify is to say, give them something to react to, give them some information to react to. And that's exactly what the use verifies do. They provide that information for them to react to. And then it's the beautiful balance of saying, you know, so what's your gut telling you? Because they'll get to the right. That's right. That sounds right. We should do this. There's where the balance comes in.
That's a good point. Okay, that's right. That's right. Thank you.
I have to say that we're doing an example of this for me right now. We're driving down into the specifics of what each drive does to make synergy. Where, to my mind, we haven't distinguished between teamwork and synergy. And if you're going to really sell this, that this is and I was actually seeing this as another product. That yeah, you got a good team, but the difference is, like like apparently with horses, when the two horses can pull so much of a load, when you put four, it doesn't just go up to twice as much. It can go up to 10 times as much because they first of all pull, but then they learn how to pull together. And there's a way of stride, and there's a way of who takes what lead, and when one gets tired, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking, this same list could be the same list for what makes a team work. And they all have to, do what they say they're going to do. They have to speak up sooner when something's wrong, that kind of stuff. And then I would love to go, okay, what's a teamwork? Now, what makes it synergistic? What takes that team to the next level? And what's the refinements? And then I'd be looking at, I think it's still the same thing. You got to be true to yourself. Everyone's got to do their job. You got to call the things when they're not working. You got to sing the same song. All these things are going to be the same. But the difference that makes it synergistic is the team, I think, finds we're all in stride individually. The team finds its own stride in stride. It creates its own awareness that we are in stride now. And they have a feel for that. And even though they might be fine or not good, they have a sense the team's not in stride, and they do something immediately to fix it. And that's the distinction I'm looking for, the difference between teamwork and stride, synergy. Does any of that
So
come
thank
through?
you. Yeah. Yes. I'd like to understand it a little more. I think you're hitting on something that, certainly I wasn't thinking of. So it'd be good to understand what you mean a little more. Um, do you mean about things like I know when a team feels that it's winning, for example, it's going to be more successful and look at things more positively and constructively. Yeah, I'm trying to just
Okay.
understand what you mean
Let's
by
use a
that.
sports metaphor. So let's have the Yankee season, baseball season is underway now, and every team playing in there has focused on teamwork. They have teamwork coaches. They do all this stuff, and they're all going for the same prize. And they're all playing 160 odd games a year, and they're all going to win probably at least 50 or 60 of those. And the ones that are going to get to the World Series are the ones that win more than 80, and then that number gets down. And the difference is going to be that as things change through the year and people come in and out with injuries, they pull up the slack. They know when someone needs something else. Somehow they do something beyond the steps of teamwork to. Look. I just know there's something there that
Yeah,
creates a sense. It's a bigger sense of me. It's a bigger sense of self. And I'm feeling you, and I'm compensating for that by doing something else more. And so you don't have any demarcations between sales and marketing and all that. They somehow think of how it's all working at any level. Like, anyway, I know there's something there, but I'm with you, Paul. I don't know I haven't got the right metaphor for it yet.
no,
I've
but
just
I love
just
what you're saying. Sorry, who was Ian? You
No,
go.
sorry, me. I was just wondering, there's that great quote from Laurie Kendall about when we understand each other, what that really means, and the sort of almost like the biochemical reaction that happens. It's like when you get me and I know that you get me, we can actually, it's almost like it just there's that it's not just the trust, but that instant connection. So that removes a lot of the barriers. So to me, that's a big part of the synergy. I'm not sure if that's exactly what Greg's getting at, but that's where my mind was going, was in terms of, it's like if you think of synergy, I suppose a lot of it is, it's almost like without thought, it just happens. It's not
So
without
first of all, I think this is a great example of synergy, like, and if we were to shift to the Authenticate drive, it'll probably bring out exactly what's occurring right now, which is, we can talk about something conceptually, and then there's additional level of clarity and meaning and value that the Authenticate can pull out of it. Because what I'm sensing is there is something here, and I see this a lot of times where the authenticator person, which is Greg in this case, says something, but other people don't necessarily get it straight away, so it's very easy to dismiss it. But because this is the power, because we know Greg, both as a 8 in Authenticate and a black belt on ID and seasoned with ID, there's something there enough to say, let's stay with this a minute and unpack it. Because what's coming up for me, Greg, is I'm wondering whether synergy has like gears to it or stages to it of how it evolves. So the first step is to create the environment for it. The second is you start getting the synergy between the individuals. So using your baseball example, you start getting them playing well, and they're building a synergy because of the differences they each bring to the table. But as that builds momentum, there's a synergy from the synergy almost, or there's a team synergy from the individual synergy. And I think that's what I'm sensing you're hitting on, which I hadn't thought about, being candid, but I think there's great truth in that, because when a team does get momentum going, and maybe that creates an even richer level of synergy of the team itself, like that sense of winning, that sense of care, where you shift from being about me to we,
Yeah.
yeah.
It goes from making sure that I deliver what you've asked me to do to me anticipating what you're going to ask me for. And it goes to me preparing for the possibility that you didn't see that might break. I don't tell you that, but I'm ready in case it does. And there's a classic scene where Derek Jeter does this cutoff throw from right field into home plate, and it's the bad throw, and he's runs out of the field to go get this bad throw, and everyone's going, "What are you doing there? That's not even your position. Why'd you even go there?" And he makes the throw, gets the tag, and he saves the game, right? It's one of those things. And he goes, "How did he even know to be there? To go there?" And then you think of some of the teams we've worked where they've reached past just doing the delivery, and they've done something, and the rest of the Bruce go, "Wow, you guys are market leaders now." And they went somewhere that it wasn't expected to go, but it turned out to pick up something. They're picking a clue up. They're picking a signal up that says, we're going to need this. But Paul, the point I want to reinforce what you said is, we're able to hear those people who appear outliers from the system and the structure. And those outliers is where the synergy lies.
Right. Thank you so much, Greg. I'm going to listen to the rest of the recording later, but right now I'll leave you with Ian's leadership and capable hands. Thank you so much, Ian. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Paul. All right. Okay. So we'll segue. Is this a nice time to segue into the use Authenticate drive, or I thought, given what we were just discussing there, we give it the communication drive. I was just listening to that, and I thought it was a very astute, observation. It's that, I think, and I suppose I was diving in with Paul doing the conceptual or the theoretical approach, where Greg goes to practical. How's this really going to work, and what's it really going to look like? Which I think, to me, always comes down to, whenever you look at the Authenticate drive, is the real talent they bring to the table. And I know personally that's the one I tap into quite a lot, to say, well, this is what I think, and here's all of the different nuances, subtleties, that I'm picking up. But how do we actually put that across in a way that's going to land for everyone? Like, make it, actionable, realistic, provide the clarity they need, as opposed to providing a more, nuanced, statement that people are not necessarily going to pick up on. So I'm sort of like positioning it there. But I don't want to lose the point you're making, Greg. And I'm just sort of trying to think how we go through this, whether it is worthwhile, like, you know, looking at the drives, but trying to put that more, as you say, synergistic approach. Well, what were you talking about? But that moving from the teamwork perspective to the synergy perspective.
I'll have one last stab and then I'll shut up.
Okay.
Imagine we did the same exercise for teamwork and we came up with the list, which is right. Then after that was done, we then, okay, what's the difference between that list and a synergistic list? Like what changes that? And I think it's at a team level and an individual level. So if you want to go through this one, you could go, okay, this is an authenticate difference that he brings to a team. What does an authenticate bring to the synergy? That might be a way to do it. You know, if you can make it, I would have made a bigger distinction between teamwork and synergy first, so then we know what we're talking about. But I think that I can be a team player with my drive, and it works really nice. But to me, for example, for me to be a synergistic team player is I stop talking now after I've laid that seed and I let you guys play. Whereas the team player would make sure you got it and kept going necessarily.
Actually, I'm going to pick up on that, because I wonder whether it's the movement, whether we're going from the conscious to the unconscious. Is teamwork a conscious effort and the synergistic is an unconscious? So you're doing it with actually, it just does. We just do it. Does that make sense?
That would be one of the signals to me. You anticipate. Yeah.
One of the
Yeah.
pieces to what you said earlier, Greg, that I think leads to that is the team being in stride. So yeah, definitely having the individuals in stride, but when we're working together and the team is in stride together, that's where we get to the unconscious. Like we just naturally know where to be to catch that ball, right? We just naturally know when we need to lean in to support a team member and how to do that. Versus teamwork, we don't necessarily do that in a natural, instinctive way.
Yeah. And I think with a synergistic team, you can pull someone up when it's not right, and they just hear that it's not right. They don't hear I'm not right. They don't take it personally. They just oh good, thanks. Like there's no time wasted in defense and justifications. The energy goes straight back to the task because no one suspects anyone's having a shot at them. Right? It's like you're just cleaning up something. There's some great subtleties here. I'm loving this topic, but I really feel like we're exploring something here.
No, and I think it's, you know, if I go back to it, it's like, you know, one of the things we actually like, you go back to ID certification, ID mastery, and things like that. We talk about being in awe, so that you just, it's almost like that we automatically, it's just in our nature. You don't have to consciously do it. You actually it just is. So when just as Paul just did then, when Greg said something and it wasn't immediately obvious what to Paul or myself, to be honest, what Greg was meant, we trusted enough to just go there, and there's something there, and we explore it, and we run with that, and I think we take it to another level, as it turns out, some more depth. But I think it's interesting also as well, as if we continue to work through the different drives. I think whether we can differentiate between the teamwork and the synergistic component, I mean, that might be an interesting exercise. But I think if we sort of maybe just keep plowing on with the drives, and perhaps that, and it's certainly something we could explore further and deeper in the masterclass as well. How do we move from the teamwork to the synergistic component? If that makes sense, to be honest. Okay. Can everyone see the screen okay? I've just put that up. I've left it there so I can add stuff as well. So it's actually a build slide. So I've added some points to the previous one. So I'll capture those later. But I think, we talked about, Authenticate being the drive for communication. One of the things that, we talk about, I always look at, and I said it earlier, is I look for the clarity. And I think that to bring clarity to the situation is absolutely the talent that I often look for. I know the essence of what I'm trying to get to, but how do we actually get that crystal clear picture out so that everyone is aligned on what it is we're driving towards? Is there other things that people see around the authenticate or avoid authenticate that they think that really, from a synergistic perspective, that they look for?
Sorry, that was me not wanting to talk, but wanting to get the idea out.
Yep.
I said I wouldn't say anymore.
No.
I just thought of it this way. I'm going to actually do this with some people. I'm going to have them ask them the difference, and maybe that's it. Maybe only a team can know when it's synergistic and when it's not. But they can't do that if they're not a team first.
Mm.
To me, this is like we got to get team first, and then you can't go to synergy until you've already got some team to play with. That's all I'm playing with. So these. Sorry, Ian. Back to the ID.
Back to the ID, Greg.
Hey, Ian, I really appreciate the avoid authenticate, making those below the waterline connections that I more naturally miss. So I don't know how you'd want to say that, but I think that's something that I rely upon in a team environment.
Yeah, they make connections we don't see between things.
Yep.
It's like, I think it's one of the things that I think I'm actually going to put it down there is the timing. And, when is the right time to say something? So they have a great sense of this is the right time to say it or it's not the right time. Obviously, there's pros and
I know when
cons
it's the right time, Ian. It's when I think of it.
Exactly. And I think that's often the thing is like, is this the time to say this, or do we need to take this offline, or do we, how do we manage this? And I think that, yeah, absolutely. It's like whereas with the use authenticate, but again, that's the, that piece that they bring to the table is to get the conversation, what's not being said, to be said, getting it out on the table. And I think, if you look at it from a teaming perspective, it's, I think, if I look at Euclid, you'll often say, well, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Where all the avoid authenticates will actually be having this great conversation, which we all assume we know what each other's talking about. But then you just ask the question, you go, but what are we actually trying to achieve here? And everyone goes, oh, actually, we're not as aligned as we thought we were, because we've all got a different definition of what that might look like.
Sorry, can you hear
Yep.
me? I'm having some
Yep.
audio issues. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to the initial thing of what you've been talking about between the difference between the teamwork and the synergy piece, and I'm just sort of using that avoid authenticate kind of as an example. I guess the difference, the biggest thing for me is around not when the team's at a stage where you're not paying lip service almost to other people's talents, like, oh, maybe we should ask so and so about X because they can do whatever, and it is more that automatic thing, as in, like, I know that I always know that you will find, when we work together, you will find something that I've missed. I just know it. And so I ask you, but I don't, in my head, I'm not saying, oh, I wonder if I've missed something. But there's something that's so instinctive that is, I need to have a conversation with Ian about this.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's, I don't know, that just sort of popped up for me as to trying to, again, further get to the essence of what's the what's the teamwork bit and what's the synergy bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd sort of, reciprocate on that, because I'll go to Krista when I'm going, I know what I want to say, but I'm like, it'll take me a paragraph. And it's that clarity piece of like, why did you say this? And it's a sentence. Same thing, absolutely the same thing. And I just like, again, I just know that it's not as clear as it could be or should be. And then I get, then Crystal would just say that. And it's get to the essence, I think, is the word I don't know if maybe I'll put that up there as potentially it, but having that ability to get to the essence of it, as opposed to sort of dance around the edges. Is there anything anyone else would want to add on that? Or used to having more discussion around some of these. Shall we crack on and have a look at the use complete and void complete? Where do people see the synergies between these two, or where do they come up?
Well, I would say for me, as an avoid a 2 incomplete, I think it takes 20 minutes to go everywhere. So I really rely on the use completes to kind of level that out and give me an idea of how long something's going to take, and more around how it's really going to flow. Because I might have an idea of the goal, but I don't have that natural talent that they do for flow and process.
And I think the ability of the avoid complete to be able to start. I know that's something that I really, again, we're getting into the or component, but from what I look for when working with people who are avoid complete, they it's just go, and it's just start. Where I find as a use complete, that is one of my biggest challenges, is not knowing where to start. And I think avoid complete just have this absolute, as we know, a talent for just getting going. And that is often if you're thinking if I think from a team or a synergistic perspective, that actually, like, if we're if you're in a meeting, the use complete will like, well, how are we going to do this? And we can get bogged down a bit. Was like when we were talking with use verify, can get bogged down into well, what have we got to do first? What are we going to do? And as a consequence, won't move it forward. Whereas the avoid complete will just go, let's keep going. Let's do this. Let's go on here. And it moves the conversation. It moves the thinking forward. And enables the not to stagnate, I guess, is probably what I would see there.
And I think the synergy piece of that is when teams are able to do that and it doesn't come at a cost.
Yes. And actually, I wanted to pick up as well. I think Krista said it before, and I think this is going to apply like across the board. It's like overall with synergy, it's like truly appreciate what the other one's doing. And it's like, as it sometimes as a use complete, you see something and there's a potential there, but you may not have all of the detail around, or may not, but there's something we need to address. And if it's overlooked or dismissed quickly, then I think we can miss some really critical pieces, that would potentially save us a lot of time in the future. So it's a bit like when we were saying with the use authenticate, we're saying like, we know there's something there, we trust that it's got to be. Again, with the use complete, trust that there's something at the bottom of that, and we need to explore it a bit more rather than just say, no, we won't, we'll deal with it later. Again, that's that synergy piece,
Yeah.
I think is going to be really, really important.
It's
So
like we're honoring all the drives and all the perspectives the drives bring. We often say that everyone sees it differently, but in this synergistic team, everyone has the voice. There's some way they've worked out that everyone has a voice. They can disagree and agree, and that nuance of that drive can come through, and the team gets the benefit of it actually operating. All you got 8 pairs of, of eyes and hands working on the thing. You know,
Absolutely.
how do they
Absolutely.
do that and make sure everyone gets heard?
well, I can think of a metaphor here for synergy, and it's something that it's phenomenal when it happens. And maybe as an avoid authenticate, it's more of the feeling that I had, but I actually watched somebody pitch a perfect game in baseball. And we all got up at the 7th inning in this stadium of 40,000 people. And it was almost like collectively at once, we all realized what was happening and what we were witnessing. And all of a sudden, it felt like everyone just came together and wanted this guy to win, wanted to see it happen. And it didn't matter which team you were for, you just wanted to see this happen. And so to me, that's a little bit of like a really fluidly operating football team. They don't think about, they kick the ball and they expect the person on the other side in the position to get it and go for it. And the teams that really have that are the ones that really win when they're not worried about their own performance. They're more focused on the goal. There's actually a video that you can get, and it's a picture of sand when it gets shook a lot, and eventually it will shake into this amazing pattern. And that's what synergy does.
Yeah, yeah.
That's nice.
And I think you've hit on the thing there is like, so why are we even kind of like bothering about this? But it is about an opportunity to get really exceptional results that are beyond what you get with cooperation or camaraderie or whatever. And there's, again, I think there's that definitely that sort of switch between a kind of intellectual let's do teamwork approach versus the instinctive kind of happening part. And I think that again goes back to none of this is going to show up without some of those basics in the beginning around people are empowered to go to work in a way that they don't have to go, is it okay if I go and ask so-and-so about this? Or, you know, that it's that the conditions are there and created and driven by the leader that enables the environment for it to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's then, you know, and it's that, you know, it's the results go beyond the leader as well. Because I think if you just have it, like you say, but I mean, I think if it's truly a synergistic team, I mean, obviously, I think the leader needs to have set that sort of, you know, environment up, but it's almost like the team needs to then continue, like whether the leader's there or not, the team needs to continue to operate in that synergistic approach. It's not like, oh, we've got to wait for the leader before we can, you know, be synergistic. You know, it's like we've created that environment. This is how we do it, or how we are. It's a sense of being as opposed to, you know, doing, I suppose, and that's going to be pretty important, or essential, I would think. All right. Well, we've got 10 minutes, so I'm going to just go on and let's capture this. And I think, you know, there's some great stuff that we're going to sort of be able to sort of dig further into when we get into the next, to the masterclass. But again, I think, you know, one of the things, you know, if you start to look at the synergistic, you know, between the use and the avoid improvise, you know, to pick one of the you know, the possibilities, the use improvise said the possibilities, and the avoid improvise, how do we make it sustainable? So it's got, or even probably a better example, you know, the use improvise might blaze the trail, but if no one then comes and builds the road, then the trail's just going to grow over again. So you've got that, absolute, approach whereby, the two work together and recognizing it. I know, again, if I look at it from me with use improvise, I'm like, okay, I'm stuck. I can't see why don't we, say to Pam, what do you think we should do? Oh, why don't we just try this? And just to go, like, I think sometimes you go, oh, how will I do that? But to actually then just be with that, the thought and the idea, and to run with it, and to go, okay, let's find out what that could look like. And as you're going and as you're talking it through, you start to go, oh, okay, that's how I could do it. That's how I could do it. And you start for me, it's then taking that, the idea, the possibility, and to turn it into something that I can then go and do or implement. And I think that, to me, is always what I look in with the use improvise drive, where what I always try to bring into any of the thought process, as opposed to just keep doing what we've always done, which I suppose is a bit of use complete as well. Any other thoughts in that?
Yeah, I think for me, the synergy is, I oftentimes will say I need I need that avoid improvise, the calm down. I try to get my inner avoid improvise going, model that.
Yeah. I think, I look at the avoid improviser, there is that sense of calmness that we sort of certainly bring to the table. I think, again, when the true synergy happens, it's also recognized, like the use improvise don't see the calmness as not engaged, not excited, not or even potentially saying no. It's just that's the energy that they bring to the table is going to show up very, very differently. And then that's just, again, it's not sort of being put off by that when they recognize that that's just how they need to be. What about our other use improvisers? There's a few on the call.
Well, just thinking of some past examples, one example that I can think of, it wasn't so much just saying, I value that, but giving that person the freedom to be in that, and recognizing I'm only going to benefit by this person. They're going to be focused in this and going to go deep and going to identify every single risk and obstacle. But instead of me saying, okay, yeah, I get it, let's move on, to allow them to be in that space. And I'm not rushing or in the back of my mind, like we need to go faster, but really, truly allowing them to be in that space is where I think the synergy happened.
Is there anything obvious that it's sort of missing from, that we've got up on the chart here that then we should be adding?
Well, avoid improvise, I think it's the calmness, calm energy, the grounding. To me, it's like I feel grounded around avoid improvise.
Right. Actually, for me, I think there is a way. I think that's the piece I always look at. It's like, with the use improvise, there is always a way. And for me, it becomes like, I would never have thought of that. And I love that, because that's like, wow. We're not stuck anymore, but there is always a way. Anything else anyone would want to add on to those?
This is a list of things we all bring anyway.
Yeah.
Like, what's the distinction between what makes it synergistic? This is a list of the things that we all bring. Is it possible that a synergistic team allows people to bring all that they can be? And because of that extra bit they bring without judgment, they see things, hear things, perceive things in a way that a team that's just a team, so to speak, misses, because their energy is going into, I don't know, defending themselves or explaining themselves, or I don't know,
I think so.
not going to the task.
Yeah, I think that's it, and I think it comes back to what we were saying earlier. It's that it's when you I suppose taking it from that I need to go and talk to Greg because he's a use improvise to get that impact. To just we just do it, and I'm not sure a better way to describe it, but it just becomes how we do things. We don't have to. It's almost like taking it. As I go back from taking it from the conscious to the subconscious. As a synergistic team, we're just naturally looking at, I'm looking at, I probably see of use authenticate, use improvisers on the screen anyway at the moment. And I'm just like, that's what we do. And just like, the avoid authenticate, the avoid improvise, that the use improvise don't see that they're trying to be negative, or that they're, shutting the conversation down or closing off possibilities, that their energy and that is that it's just they're considering, and there's process, and we're going to get some gold out of this. It's again that it's a natural, almost organic thing, as opposed to a consciously got to go and do that thing. I don't know if that answers the question, Greg, or whether that's something we need to dig into further.
Well, it seems to me the awe part, like Greg, you referred to, we're talking about what's the awe, but I think you have to appreciate that to bring the synergy in, because if I'm looking at him going like, I'm going to work with Ian and he's going to really calm me down and help me to be more grounded in these ideas that we're doing. And to me, that does produce the synergy, but I have to really appreciate what is opposite from me in a way. So it's like risks and obstacles, and then the comment, there is a way. So if we're both aware of that and we appreciate that about each other, that's the synergy.
Yes.
I'm conscious that we haven't heard from a lot of other people that are on the call, and it's partly my fault. But it'd be nice to know what they're thinking right now, what meaning they're taking from this.
Anyone like to volunteer? It's the void improviser. They're processing, they're thinking it through.
I'm observing. I'm listening. I don't have any unique insights, so I go to the thought provocation for me is all about when have I experienced this, and it's actually been quite nice to think about that on the side of this conversation going, because I've worked in some fantastic teams, but I don't necessarily have the insights into all the special sauce that led us there. For me, the biggest part of synergistic teams, not just about the individual drives here, was about the common purpose that people really believed in, and it wasn't just lip service to, oh yeah, that sounds really great, and I'm on board, let's get it done, but a real investment in the outcome, and that's what was the overarching thread that even when people weren't necessarily in stride, not that I knew what that was back then, but even when they weren't at their best, that's what pulled people through, is that it was like, there was an investment, so I don't really have the unique insights that you guys have in terms of drives, but the foundational layers, I feel, in the creating the environment for it, made up for the people that were maybe 70% on the day, or not in stride on that day, or made up for the people that were coming in to the team that weren't. They're like, well, what's all this about? Oh, okay, there's such a roll on, there's such an energy to that. I don't think of it like family or caring but this common thread that pulled people through, and that's how I've experienced synergistic teams.
I was going to say it might be a nice place to wrap it and sort of segue into our next meeting, which will be in a couple of weeks' time, where we could dig even further into it. So thank you for everyone for participating. Really appreciate it. And smaller group, but I think a good conversation. And I'll look forward to seeing everyone again in the masterclass in a couple of weeks.